this discussion is going to be probably my first time talking about a lot of this stuff with an outsider, right? I most of the guys I know were very, very close, tight. It's if you haven't been there, I don't really want to discuss it, type of thing. Um, but having done some soul searching, I mean, if whatever I've been through and what I'm going through currently can help a guy that's out there, uh, you know, then it's my duty to do it.
Mostly over the past 10 years, I've been talking to Vietnam vets. It started with World War II vets, and then, that generation moved on. And so then, I've been focusing on Vietnam vets. But what I'm seeing as I'm kind of thinking more about Iraq and Afghanistan is that the Iraq and Afghanistan guys are kind of where the Vietnam guys were in the 80s and 90s, kind of pushing things down, saying what you're saying, look, people who haven't been in a combat zone, let alone in combat, they have no idea what it's like, so why should I try to talk to them about it? And a lot of them, they'll say thank you for your service, but really they don't want to hear about it. Um,
Yeah, for a lot of years, you know, I'd stumble with the words, and it's oh, it was just a job. Just did what I had to do. And then I'd get a lot of the follow up questions. So I've got to the point where I give them a "you're welcome," and it kind of ends it, right? There's no follow ups, or there's no "oh come on," or nothing like that. And so yeah, I've gotten mixed reactions from a "you're welcome" and move on. Um,
so
because go ahead.
no, so for you then you discovered that, people say thank you for your service. Well, what you discovered is if you just say you're welcome, then that usually ends it,
It ends it.
which implies to me that you wanted to end it. You didn't want to keep talking to this person about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it depends on the person. I mean, you can gauge a person's sincerity, or what they're after. Um, I've encountered everything from you know, the the Vietnam guy who says thank you, um, to the snot-nosed kid wanting a bloody story. You know, and case in point, whenever I see a Vietnam vet, I welcome them home.
Yeah.
Right? I go out of my way, I welcome them home, and I get a lot of reactions. Right? I get a lot of they'll stand up if they can, give me their hand, and right away they'll say, "Are you a veteran?" "Yes, sir." And there's that bond, right? Because they really got the raw deal. Unpopular war, coming home to to know welcome home. Um, but yeah, the "you're welcome" just kind of ends it. Um, for for a lot of my time since leaving the army, I fought with the what we'll call the survivor's guilt, right? The I made it, so many didn't. And so I kept telling myself that I wasn't worthy of the "you're welcome," the thank yous, right? I didn't do enough. I didn't get shot up. I didn't, you know, there's so many guys that came home with no legs, no arms, guys that didn't come home at all. A thank you to me was I was unworthy. And so that's where I would stumble with well, it was just a job. Or, hey, we just did what we had to do. And then the people would follow up. Oh, come on, man. You're a hero. You're this. So, like I said, I kill it with the "you're welcome." I believe in my heart I was born a generation too late. Right? I was weaned on John Wayne and Audie Murphy. I was weaned on God, country, and apple pie. It was every boy's duty to grow up to be a man. It was every man's duty to serve, and when called to war, every man should go fight. I was already in the army when 9/11, when the towers came down. I was at Fort Bragg. All hell broke loose. Right, Bragg shut down. I mean, they put armored personnel vehicles at all the gates. I mean, it was the initial reports was New York got bombed. We didn't know if it was the Russians. We didn't know if it was the Chinese. And then there was that fervor in the country, right? It was like, we got to avenge 9/11. going back to the Vietnam reference, right? Vietnam was the first time that war got brought into everybody's living room, right? It was the first time cameras were on the line, in the shit, almost live, right? And that was the key difference with Vietnam, that which made it so unpopular, because people were watching it on the 6 o'clock news, and it was easy for civilians to form opinions. Oh, it's horrible. Iraq was that. It was prime time, man. It was action, and yeah, the country got behind us. We believed in it at first. We thought we were going to liberate a country. We thought we were going to go free these people, and they were going to come out and welcome us with open arms, and parades with flowers and bouquets, and like you see in the old movies when they rolled into Paris, and they rolled into Berlin, right? And we really believed that early on. I believe a lot of us believe
Did
that.
you did you see that early on? I mean, there's the invasion of 2003. It goes really quickly. It seems like the Gulf War all over again, easy victory. Not long after, the president's landing on the aircraft carrier with the missions accomplished banner behind him. Seems like another easy war. Of course, that's not what happens, but we see this early video of people coming out and clapping and cheering. Did you witness all that at the outset?
Yeah, the resistance that we saw during the invasions was piecemeal, right? I didn't see a single guy in a uniform, and I was at the Battle of Samoa. I was in Karbala. I was outside of Fallujah at the Abaniya Air Base when we took it. And these guys that we were coming up against were the Fahidin Saddam, who were Ba'athist loyalists. They were loyal to Saddam, but I mean, they didn't put up much of a fight. I mean, it was piecemeal. I mean, it was. I mean, you know, we slaughtered them, man. I mean, it was no contest. I mean, did we take casualties? Sure. Did we have some encounters where, hey, we locked horns with somebody who knew what they were doing? Some fire and maneuver. They were good at fire and maneuver. They were good at moving mortar tubes. Um, but yeah, I mean, we rolled through there, and within 6 weeks, we were knocking on the door at Baghdad, and we took Baghdad. I mean, it was a slight skirmish, Third Infantry Division at the airport, and then it collapsed. And that's when we went from an invading force to an occupation, and now we're in force, and we went from balls to the wall, outrunning our supply lines, you know, push, 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 push. We get to Baghdad, and now it's enforcing curfews, and it's traffic control points and blocking positions on the highway. Um, and initially, I mean, and I get it. I mean, it was brand new. The war was brand new, and they told us, "Hey, man, 4 months trigger pullers. You're going to take the country. You're coming home." And I was like, "Sweet, shit." I packed 4 cartons of smokes. I was like, "Hey, we'll be back in 4 months." Um, but
And is that what it seemed like? I mean, you're up against supposedly Saddam's best, and they're putting up resistance, but not much. It
mm,
seems like a pretty easy thing. So if we freeze that, you mentioned this transition from invasion, take Baghdad to occupation. If we kind of freeze the frame right there at that transition, in your mind at that time, did it seem like, wow, that was pretty easy, and we're gonna be going home pretty soon?
yeah, yeah. While we were pushing north, we were getting reports that there was still, and I remember they would tell us it was that the Medina division was out there in the desert somewhere. It was a division of armor that was holding out in the desert, and that's why we kind of did this end to run, right? When we hit Karbala, we turned. I was with the 82nd, and we were shadowing Third Infantry Division, and basically we were securing crossing and access points of the Euphrates, so the armor could get through. And we kind of did an end around. There's a huge lake just south of Karbala, and we kind of did this end around towards Fallujah because the Marines had gotten bogged down in Fallujah, and Abaniya Air Base was around there, and so we came around, did a little end run, and yeah, when we rolled into Baghdad, I mean, it was 05 in the morning when we pushed in, and I mean, there was people on the streets, and they're yay and celebrating, and what have you, and then it was and this was before the fobs, right? Kellogg Brown and Root hadn't shown up yet, and so we literally kicked people out of their houses, and we were living in people's houses, and we put up concertina wire all around, and we were living out in the boonies, out in the sector. There were no fobs,
Yeah,
and so then at that point it was what next?
you just used this phrase, the Marines got bogged down a little bit in Fallujah, and of course, that brings to mind what's coming in Fallujah. Nobody knows in 2003 what has yet to come in Fallujah
Right.
when this war becomes a very, very different thing. But you asked that question, okay, well, here we are in Baghdad, it seemed pretty easy. Folks are out cheering for us. So now what? How long now? This question is assuming something, so if my assumption is wrong, let me know. But how long was it before, in your own mind, you realized that the folks in charge didn't actually have a good answer for that question? Now what? I mean, first, do you agree with the premise of the question? And then if so, how long was it before you realized, man, I don't think these dudes really had any idea, what was going to happen after the invasion?
Well, yeah, and it was. I'll keep it generic. I won't use any names, but yeah, shortly after that, our brigade commander got orders for a new assignment. He left us, right? Full bird colonel. Oh, I got another job. Peace. I got my CIB. I'm out. Sergeant major got rotated out. They all got sent home stateside. We got new colonels, new sergeant majors as an occupying force, but we were stuck there, right? I never really, we hit a lull, but to be fair, the operational tempo never slowed down. I saw the birth of the IED. First IED we got hit with was two 60 millimeter mortar rounds, little bitty things, sound like a firecracker, and they put them right outside of our house where we were staying. And I remember our company XO, we were doing a chow run, and we were escorting the company XO and his his guys, and he was we were all in Softskin Humvees, and he had a cargo, and we rolled into our regular route to go to the house, and then pop, it went off. Shortly thereafter, it was a cinder block with a 155 in it, and then you know it never slowed down. The IEDs got more complex, they got more sophisticated. We started by the surge, and I know I'm jumping ahead. By the time we got to the surge, I mean, we were seeing EFPs, Iranian technology. We were seeing passive infrared sensors, remote detonation. It was so rudimentary when we got there in 2003. They were literally using photo strobes and copper wire they stripped off of electric motors.
You just referred to soft-skin Humvees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is an indication that there hadn't been a whole lot of sophisticated thinking about what might come after. And we know the victory is going to be easy, victory in quote marks. And then what? And we got these soft-skin Humvees, which are kind of a symbol. In my mind, they're a symbol of folks not really thinking this through. One thing I want to ask you is that very first IED, you described it as kind of a small thing. If you could remember, I mean, in your mind at the time, how did you interpret that? Just, some punk kids just trying to cause trouble, or was that a signal to you of something to be worried about?
No, no, it was so all along, there was a resistance. There was, fighting age males, resistance, just resisting the man, right? They'd push the curfews. They would taunt us. We had blackout curfews. If you were out after dark, we were guns free. At least we had permission to be guns free. Now, does that mean we were mowing every BMW that rolled by? No. We'd give chase. We'd try to catch them. Hey, dude, get your ass home. you know, uh, that type of thing. But there was always a resistance, and you could see it. You could see it in their body language. You could see it. They didn't want us there, and no one wanted us there. I think the only people that wanted us there, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, is the women. The women wanted us there because those poor people lived. They're second class citizens. They thought we were bringing them freedom. They live under the boot of their fathers and then their husbands. Um, you know,
Is this something that you as you're looking around observing, and I'm sure over three tours, you're doing a lot of looking around.
mhm.
Um, this is something you felt like you picked up, if the women actually had a voice, one of the things they'd tell you is, we could use some protection.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll give you. This sticks out in my mind. Um, when we rolled into Baghdad that morning, I mean, it was sunrise. We were driving east into the sun. I'll never forget this. It was a divided highway, and I was a gunner at the time. I was a 50 cal gunner, so I was up in the gun. And this gorgeous woman, I mean, done up, right? Tight jeans, high heels, the whole nine, strutting along the highway, waving her butt off. And of course, we hadn't seen a woman in several weeks, if not a couple months, right? And so everybody's like, dude, right? Everybody's like turning, right? And we roll by and they're waving. I mean, makeup, hair, the whole nine. And we just blow past them, right? But then in hindsight, I asked myself, man, what happened to that poor woman? You know, they thought we were coming to bring, you know, blue jeans and McDonald's and education and freedom. And I really think the women of Iraq, I'll say, because I can't speak for all of the Middle East, you know, I think we left them high and dry, and it's a tribal culture, and it's thousands of years of ingrainment, but they're all of them know about the United States. All of them know. You speak to any Iraqi, what do you want to do? I want to go to the USA, and I want to go to Disneyland, and I love Michael Jackson. All of them, right? And and then later throughout my deployments, we would do a lot of infrastructure projects, and we would do school setups, and running electricity to schools and draining sewage out of streets, and you'd see these little girls going to school in their little uniforms and stuff, and of course, we can't interact with the females, we can't talk to them, we can't look at them, whatever, but you see them, right? And now I'm a father of two little girls. Maybe that's God's way of giving me that. But they live a horrible, rough life. You know, and you'd see a 12-year-old snot ass kid just smack the hell out of some old lady. And I mean, flat out,
And there was nothing you could do.
nothing.
You're told to stay out of it.
Can't do anything. We were doing a cordoned search. We were looking for weapons, and we found I could get into more details later if you want, but we found a little girl. She had been shackled and locked in a crawl space under a stairwell. And when we found her, her teeth, if you've ever seen shattered teeth and coagulated blood, eyes swollen shut, malnourished, beaten, soiled, we couldn't do anything.
Really?
And her
Why?
father,
Because
her,
that's an infringement on Iraqi culture or something?
yeah, we frantically tried to get a female medic. Get us a medic. Get us a woman. Get us a woman, please. Get us a woman. Her father did this to her, and the worst part was her mother defended the father. And we're frantically trying to get we tried to get the Iraqi police to come in, and they wouldn't do it, and we had to leave that little girl there as to not to fucking offend them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it haunts me because she's probably fucking dead.
so you mentioned, you're talking about draining sewage and uh, other things you mentioned, sort of the hearts and minds stuff, trying to win the people over with good works. Although I mean, this is kind of the insanity of it, is even as I'm just putting together things you've said in the last couple of minutes. We're going to build schools for them, but the little girl who might go to that school when she's being treated worse than an animal, um, we can't do anything about it. That just, it doesn't make sense. We're going to build a school, but we're not empowered to help the kids who actually might go to the school. It doesn't make any sense, at least in my mind. But at any point, so we're again, it's tough. It's a challenge in your situation because 3 tours in Iraq. So I mean, there's so much I know that you could say, but was there at any point in those 3 tours, you've got the combat thing going on, you've got the, at least part of the time, you've got hearts and minds stuff going on. At any point in those 3 tours, did you feel like Iraq could be a country that, say, people in the Philippines would recognize as a somewhat functioning democracy, that people in Guatemala would recognize as a somewhat functioning democracy? I mean, we'll put aside, Canada or Germany or something like that. But I mean, did you ever feel that, maybe Iraq could be a somewhat reasonably well functioning democratic society?
So I I get chuckles from some of my buddies, but by 2004, I was a Saddam Hussein supporter. I'll be honest. I was like, give it back to him. I mean, seriously, the corruption, the corruption in the, I'll call it, I'll say it. I'm not a xenophobe, please, but the corruption in the culture is ingrained so deep, and these people who were under Saddam's boot quibble and will fight over crumbs. And they, and we learned early too, like, before we caught Saddam, that was that was it. That was the mission. I mean, it was constant intelligence. Hey, there was a Saddam sighting. Man, we're rolling. Everybody, boom, boom, choppers are going up, helos going up, Spectre gunships going up. There's a sighting. We got a grid. Move, move, move. Well, then we learned and we figured out they were fucking playing us. And Warlord A, who was pissed off at Warlord B, would rat out Warlord B to us, and we go kick the crap out of him
Yeah.
blindly, right? He's got weapons. Oh, really? Here we are, 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, kicking in his door, looking for guns. Nothing there. They were playing us, and as backwards as they are, they're brilliant because they played on our morality. They played on us being the good guy. And after a while, it's like another dry hole, another dry hole. And to go back to your comments about the infrastructure, they played us with that. We'd roll in, and this was by the time my third deployment, we'd roll into Iskandaria. They have no functioning water, running water. They have no functioning sewage. They're running diesel generators with extension cords to houses. And we come in with billions of dollars, and some politician with a big old grin wearing body armor talking about, hey, we're going to do this for you, is we want to
Right.
be your friend,
Yeah.
and we're going to get you jobs. And you see these warlords, and that's what they were, these tribal guys. They're They're warlords. And he's got these warlords sitting at a conference table, some stiff from Washington, and they're like, we're gonna dig you a sewer, and we're gonna get all this sewer water out, and they're the same assholes that are blowing up the pipeline at night.
Mm-hmm. It sounds so much like Vietnam, man.
It, and I don't know, right? I mean, I wasn't there, but
Yeah.
but they didn't want us. They don't want democracy.
How would you summarize each of the three tours? What was the main storyline of the three tours?
So the first tour with the 82nd was the invasion, occupation, and then come home, right? And then it was a lot, and it turned into a lot of security, blocking positions. So, they were building up BIOP. BIOP was the central hub, right? Baghdad International. So you had that main artery going in there, and so we had to secure that stretch of highway going into the city, and that was IED alley. They were just trying to knock off anything coming in or out of the airport, and so we were out there just 24/7. Um, the second tour, so I came home in March of 04. I got orders for Fort Hood. I was at Hood by June. By the end of July, I was back in Iraq with 25 Cav. And 25 Cav is the storied battalion in the National Geographic movie Long Road Home. Now, I missed the Battle of April 4th, but I got to Soldier City in July. Soldier City is the worst place on earth. It's 2.5 square kilometers, and there's about 2.5 million people crammed into it. Saddam filled it with the criminals, the mentally ill. He filled it with everyone that he didn't want, and it was the haven for the Mahdi militia and Muqtada al-Sadr. So my second deployment was a combination of ceasefires and constant street to street combat with the Mahdi militia. So my third tour with third of the 509th out of Alaska, we were so airborne battalions are a little bit smaller than regular line units. So I was a Delta company, which is anti-tank heavy weapons. We were mounted. We trained primarily mounted. So we were occupying a large sector south of Baghdad, outside of Hazwa, Iskandaria, Hila, Musaib, between the Tigris and the Euphrates. And that was a lot of patrols, raids, and then the surge hit, and then it was just balls to the wall, out in the sector, show of presence, some hearts and minds, a lot of night patrols, a lot of raids, Mahdi militia again, some Sunni insurgents. We got caught between a lot of the sectarian violence.
The sectarian.
Yes, sir.
You come home and it sounds like a couple months later you're turning around and going right back after your first tour.
Yes, sir.
How did you, what was your thinking about that? Were you okay with going back? Were you like, I'd rather not, I'd rather have a little more downtime before I go back to Iraq? What was your own thinking about going back so quickly?
Oh no, I mean I would have welcomed a little more downtime. I'll be truthful. My second deployment was a very humbling and eye-opening experience. Solder City changed me.
Absolutely.
I'll be truthful. After my first deployment, man, I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Right? I'm an 82nd Airborne paratrooper. I just invaded a country. Ain't nothing gonna touch me. Solder City changed that. And when I came home after Solder City, I was a basket case. I couldn't. I had to have a weapon by my side. I couldn't sleep. I hyper vigilant. Um, basically sleeping with one eye open. And then the army did, and I'm not knocking the army, but so I got home in April, and this was 2005. I got home to orders for Alaska. And when I told them, I said, "Hey, I said I got a year left." Um, my intent was to get out of the army. I was done after Solder City. They said, "Well, you got to re-enlist to fulfill your orders for Alaska. And if you turn down your orders for Alaska, we're sending you across the street to 4th Infantry Division, and you'll be in Iraq in the next 5 to 6 weeks." And so I re-enlisted just to stay away from Iraq for a year or two. And that's when I re-enlisted for those 3 years to go to Alaska.
Out of Fort Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to pry. Is there a story or two from Solder City that you'd be willing to share that kind of illustrates what you're talking about? I mean, you've said Solder City changed you. I think you even said it broke you, right? Um, eh, are you willing to share a story or two from Solder City that kind of illustrates what you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, Solder City, you know, one, fighting in an urban environment, it really drives home the idea that the battlefield is three-dimensional, right? You watch the movies, and there's the enemy, I'm over here, we're shooting, right? In an urban environment, it's above you, it's behind you, it's underneath you, it's next to you, it's everywhere. Couple stories. One that I'll never forget was so we would do this movement, the we would clear routes right through the city, and so we would do this bounding exercise with the armor. So this was the first time I was ever around armor. I was a light airborne paratrooper most of my career. What the Cav, it's all armor. And so the tanks and the Bradleys, they'd go basically two wingmen, right? They'd have the two tanks and then the two Bradleys on the flanks, and they would push up, and then they get parallel with the line troops, the infantry guys, and then we would be on a rooftop, and then so we'd come down off the roof, we'd run down the street maybe about 100 meters or so, and then as you're running, the guy out front, he's looking for a door, right? And as soon as he sees a door, he'll call it door, 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 right? So we'll pop that door open, and we'll go all the way up to the rooftop. We'll gain a position of overwatch. Meanwhile, the Bradleys and the tanks are still behind us. Once we get that overwatch, then the Bradleys and the tanks will come up and move up to our position, and then we do it all over again. And so one afternoon we were doing this exercise, and it's an all day thing. It's completely fucking exhausting. Um, and the enemy, again, they're almost brilliant, and they'll never square up on you. They'll give you just enough fire to keep you engaged, just enough fire to keep your heads down, but it's a harassment, right? It's just a constant harassment. So one of those bounds, we were running up, and I'm humping a radio. There's a photo that I shared with you where I got this big pack with a radio on my back, and we're running, and Mike Atkins was up in the front, big guy, right? He's like, door, 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 and so we're like, take it, take it. And so I run past him, I take a knee, and I'm pulling security, and he's beating on his door, right? And it was a sheet metal door, couldn't get in, and he's just beating on this fucking door trying to get in. And right about the third kick, they came up off the rooftops and they opened up on us from above. And so, I mean, bullets are flying, asphalt spray, and that's where I learned that bullets shatter when they hit asphalt, right? So, I mean, it's just peppering all over the place. Dust is going up, and my instinct. I rolled on my side, and I picked my weapon up, on my back, and I'm firing up into the rooftop, towards the rooftop. And about that time, we're calling it up, contact, contact, right? And Bradleys are, I can hear the Bradleys, right? They're coming, bro. They fire up, right? And they get up, they push up, and they kind of get up parallel with us. And tanks are pulling up, and then I hear one of the kids. He's like, "I'm hit, I'm hit." I'm like, "Fuck," right? So I roll over and I'm crawling to him, and he's sitting there on his back, and he's doing like this, dying cockroach thing, right? And they teach you, pat, 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 right? I'm patting, I'm looking for blood, and I'm patting him down. I'm torso and legs, and I'm like, there's no blood. And I'm like, and so I grab him. I'm like, where the fuck are you hit? And he goes, my hand. I'm like, dude, get the fuck up. Like, get the fuck off your back, right? And so I'm grabbing him, right? And we're running. And so we run up behind the tank, and we're calling it up. And at this point, they're gone, right? I mean, they spray their mag, pop, 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 and then they disappear. They're gone. And so we roll up behind the tank, and he's sitting here, with his damn hand. And so I'm pulling out a dressing, and I'm just putting it on his hand. I'm like, come on, man, we gotta go, we gotta go. And where I thought was sweat, I did like this on my brow, and I looked down, and I had blood. One of the rounds, when it shattered, it had nicked me. It was a tiny little thing, right? But I looked down, and I'm like, oh shit. I started getting queasy. Uh, but that was Solder City was, and forgive the humor, but Solder City was just it was a hellhole. It was the worst place on earth, and you know everything from knee deep sewage in the streets to the enemy, and we'd go through ceasefires, and the Mahdi would come up, and they'd have a ceasefire, and so then we'd have parallel patrols. We're going down one street, they're going down the other, and we're looking at each other the whole way, right? Every alley, we're looking at them, and it's just like, make a move, man. you know, to hell with a ceasefire.
Was it that you knew that they were Mahdi, but they didn't have their weapons out, so you
Oh
couldn't
no,
do
no,
anything?
no, no, they walked with weapons, and
It was just kind of a, okay, we're not going to fight until you guys take a first move.
right, and most of them would wear black. It was very reminiscent of the Viet Cong, right? The black pajamas, the green headbands, and of course,
What
armed to the teeth.
was that how it was in Iraq that the enemy always got the first shot?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Part of the op order, I'm sure you've heard the term, is enemy situation, right? And you know every time we'd get an op order for an engagement or for an operation, and they'd say, contact is imminent, right? And so of course you go in, ears are pinned back, you're waiting for the contact, but of course it's always dictated by them, right? You know and that was the rules of engagement. That was, and I'm sure you've heard this, the rules of engagements were jokes, right? This fucking warning shot and shout, shoot. What was it? Shout, shove, shoot. Your warning shot, man. It's three steps too many. If I got to the point of shoving, if I put my hands on you, I'm taking you down. Um, it was there was never a point where it was, he's got a weapon, what do we do? You know? Um, they, like I said, they were smarter than that. The Mahdi in Sadr City during the ceasefires, they got permission to conduct patrols, so we knew they were out there. You know, and they would parallel us. We'd go down one road, one street, they'd be on the one block away. And they would parallel us as we were moving.
Wait, so help me to understand this. The Mahdi, are they the enemy?
Yes,
So presumably, though, they're patrolling with the intent of having control.
correct.
So I'm an outsider, but that doesn't make sense to me.
So,
That
so
that the army, that the enemy army, we're watching the enemy army patrol and maintaining control over this area when our overall purpose is to knock them out.
well, it was, and again, I can't speak for the generals and the colonels that were at these peace talks and who drafted these ceasefires. I don't know, you know, the terms of the ceasefires. Oftentimes, one example was we did a weapons buyback program in Solder City. And so we set up at the soccer field, the soccer stadium, and set up security with our counterparts who were there. And we were offering, $20 for an AK-47, you know, any weapon. I mean, and they'd bring, some antiques, some World War II stuff, World War I stuff, and that's where I got to actually meet some of these guys, and a lot of them spoke English, and there was some difficult conversations, it was like, you know, shot my buddy, and it was like, buddy shouldn't have been there, you know, um, you know, and you'd swap cigarettes, bullshit. What's the USA like? I want to go to the USA. Shit, put your fucking gun down, bro. you know, uh, but again, it was all power, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with Muqtada al-Sadr, but he gained notoriety and power because Saddam killed his father, the original Sadr, who consequently was what they named the sector out of, was the man's father. He was one of the hardliners. It's another story. I actually got to stand 20 feet from the man. Our my lieutenant, we were doing again hearts and minds, and we had a meeting with a whole bunch of the imams, and they all came in, and in walked Muqtada al-Sadr. Right before he got really powerful, and he sat down there, and I remember all the other imams got real nervous when he walked in. He sat right in front, and he mean mugged my CO. He mean mugged my lieutenant, and I stood there and mean mugged him. And halfway through the meeting, he stood up and walked out. Um, but he blamed the West for his father's death, and he aligned with the Iranians, and the Iranians funded him, and he was, the leader of that militia.
So who's the enemy? I mean, I'm hearing like it sounds like this
Again,
guy, I mean, he's got his own deal going on.
well, he tried to be prime minister. He ran for office. He was defeated. He was incredibly popular. Everyone loved him. I mean, no, it's just it's all regional power. It's again, it's these sheiks and muqtadas and these tribal zones, right? And it's just fighting for real estate and fighting for power. This is my town. This is my patch of dirt, you know. And I saw it mostly during my third deployment. You know, Iskandaria, Iskandaria sits on a fault line. North of Iskandaria is Sunni country. South of Iskandaria is Shia country. And that's where we saw so much of the sectarian violence between them. We'd get caught in the middle. And they were driving dump trucks into their mosques literally across the street. You know, I mean, but it's all for power. All for power. And who can get it and who can hold on to it. And you're absolutely right when you reference Saddam being the right man for the job. They respect power and they respect violence. They respect strength.
He kept a lid on all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, like the guys you're fighting in May, you might be fighting guys who have a completely different reason to fight in July.
Absolutely.
So who
Absolutely.
are the enemy? I mean, again, let's take all three tours together. You're you're in a convoy. You're walking down a city street. You've got a hearts and minds thing, but you've always got guys on security.
Mhm.
So, I mean, who are Who, I mean, if you had a list of like,
At,
who's
at,
the enemy? Who
it,
are we fighting?
at this point, Doc, it's survival. I don't give a shit who you are. You pick up a weapon against us, we're going to take you out. I don't care what tribe you're from. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care who you align with. Is this your town, my town, your street, their street? At this point, it's survival. And it's, I got to get these guys home. I got to get my ass home. You shoot at me, I'm leveling the block and I'm going to take you out. Every mission, every patrol, every raid was survival.
And it kind of doesn't matter
It doesn't matter.
who the enemy is.
I
And
mean, one day it could be a dude dressed up like an Iraqi policeman. The next day it's a Mahdi militiaman. The next day it's a Iraqi army guy who flipped his lid and kills a MIT team. I mean, uniforms don't matter. There is no uniform. There is none. Women, children, doesn't make a shit. Middle of a firefight in Solder City, swapping lead, dead dude in the middle of the street. They're sending kids out there to get the weapons because they know we won't shoot kids. They're brilliant. They know our weaknesses. They know we have big hearts. We love puppy dogs and little kids. You push a 10-year-old out there to pick up an AK-47, we're not going to waste him. And they know it. They played us.
so whatever the war meant, when you go into Iraq in 2003, certainly it sounds to me like, when you go back for tour two and tour three, whatever the war meant in 2003, it doesn't mean that now. All it means is me and the soldier next to me and getting home alive.
Mhm.
That's it. That's all the war.
Yeah. Dog and pony. It was dog and pony show. It was survive.
Yeah.
That's it.
Suppose I put you in front of or you've been given the task of stepping in front of a group of 50 people. You've only got 3 or 4 minutes, and you're asked to just say, here's the here's the memory I have that most symbolizes or that best captures my experience in Iraq. Again, 3 tours. I mean, you could write a book so long, if you went through all of your memories, but so you've got 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. Here's one memory that better than any other single memory just kind of captures Iraq in my experience. What would that be?
I think it was, and I can say it was being being tasked being tasked with executing combat missions while being handcuffed by so many rules. I used to, my wife now, she was my girlfriend during my third deployment. We would go out on night. We used to call them SKTs, small kill teams, IED overwatches. We would watch a road and we would wait to see, guys come up and to lay IEDs. And if they came bopping along, shoot them. And I used to tell my girlfriend some of the constraints we had, right? And she'd say, "Babe, that's bullshit. What do you mean you got to follow the rules? They're not following the rules."
What
And
were the rules? I mean,
I mean,
give us
I
an
mean,
example of a rule you had to follow.
it was you had to have positive identification that he had a weapon and he had intent to use it. And so we would sit there and watch him at 3 o'clock in the morning, the pitch ass black dude coming out of the woods or the reeds or the fields and standing on the side of the road. You knew what he was doing, but we had to wait. Is he digging? No, he's not digging. Wait till he digs. Do you see something? Does he have an artillery round? What's he got? I don't see anything. Wait.
Yeah, yeah. So the enemy always has the advantage.
Absolutely. And they play it on. They play us. They know. They absolutely know. They knew our rules. The one that just used to irk me was they stored their weapons and their intelligence in the mosques because they knew we wouldn't go in there. We were not allowed. And we watched guys shoot at us, run into the mosque, and that's where it ended. We couldn't pursue. The mosques were directing them over the loudspeakers. Here come the Americans. Come out, fight them, kill the invader. We couldn't
And
do anything about
into the mosque,
it. Uh-huh.
and you're safe.
Mhm.
So you said earlier that when you came home from your second tour, you had changed as a result of that. Um, Again, looking at the three tours altogether, when when do you get out of the army? Is about 2010,
I got out in 09.
2009.
Yes, sir.
I mean, so between 2003 and what, 2008, three tours in Iraq, three combat tours in Iraq.
Yes, sir.
So how is the Edmundo who came out of Iraq for the third time at the end of that third tour? How is that young man different from the one who went in with the invasion of 2003?
There is, I'll say this, is there is nothing over there worth one American life. I'll never support sending our most precious resource into a conflict for people who don't want us. When I was young, I believed in, again, John Wayne and Sands of Iwo Jima and God Country. My grandfather jumped into Europe in World War II. My other grandfather was in Burma. You know, I I believed it, and now I uh, I have a lot of close connections who are Vietnam veterans, and just as they are bitter and hurt and feel betrayed, I feel that. We fought a war for Kellogg Brown and Root and Halliburton, and then we lost the fucking oil fields to the Chinese. If we'd at least gotten the oil, I could say, fuck it. My gas is cheaper for my sacrifice. But they don't want us there. They don't want democracy. They don't give a shit about us. They want to kill us. They hate us. They despise us. We're less than human to them. I'll never support another foreign war. I'll defend my home to my dying breath, but I will never support going to a foreign land or sending our most precious resource to a foreign land to fight and die so fat cats can get rich. I feel betrayed. I feel that everything I believed as a boy was bullshit. We weren't fighting fascism. We didn't liberate Europe. We went and fought for fucking oil fields, disguised in the guise of avenging 9/11.
So early on in the discussion, you referred to survivor's guilt. Of course, a lot of combat vets talk about. As you think about those who didn't survive the war, um, I'm wondering if there are one or two that you'd be willing to tell us about.
Sure. Um, Captain Captain Paul Pena was he was from San Marcos, Texas, and he was a he was one of our platoon leaders at Dog Company 3rd 509. Young kid, West Point graduate, good looking little fucker, young guy, right? Butter bar lieutenant. And any kid that shows up, and I love to say this, but any kid that shows up to an op order in an Iron Maiden T-shirt and flip flops, you just gotta fucking love. And he was a good kid. He was first platoon. I was second. Um, but he was from San Marcos, so I always kind of, you know, hey, can't wait to get home and have a Whataburger, right? Whatever. Well, he was killed in Afghanistan after we'd come home. He was a company commander, 2nd Battalion, 508th, 82nd Airborne Division. And from what we've been told was they were on a dismounted patrol up in the mountains, and he stepped on a device. Um, he didn't feel anything. Um, when we heard of his loss, a lot of the a lot of the dog company guys got together. I ran point, and we got rooms in San Antonio. He was buried at Fort Sam Houston. Um, we coordinated with his mother. He was single man, and we all got together as a company to say goodbye. But he was great kid. I mean, just sense of humor, metalhead, um, real good kid. He didn't deserve to die up there. None of them did. Um, Corporal Johnson, Corporal Strong, and Joey Tinsley, Specialist Tinsley. Also, Dog Company 3rd 509. It was an accident, freak accident. We were out on a patrol, and between between the rivers south of Baghdad, it's crisscrosses with canals, irrigation canals. And the truck was up on an elevated berm. One thing about the dust in Iraq is when it rains, we called it moon dust. It was the consistency of talc, and when it got wet, it got so slippery. And Doc Tinsley and Jeremiah Johnson and Joey Strong were in the truck, and we're doing our thing. We're out there, and suddenly the truck started to slide on the berm sideways, perpendicular to the route. And it was that slippery, and the truck slid and capsized in the canal, which was filled with water. The battle drill is for a rollover is you button up, right? If you're up in the gun, you go into the truck, and you know, well, it was at this point was they were up armored Humvees. Each door weighs 400 or 500 pounds. It's upside down in the mud. It filled with water, and they drowned. And I mean, we bent 50 cal barrels trying to pry the doors open, trying to get them out. But I mean, it's a block of metal. Johnson survived for a little while. We got him out. Docs did an incredible job. They, pumping on him, CPR, got the helos in, and we got him out. But he didn't last very long. And those were the first three casualties that we took with Third 509. Specialist neighbors, Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division. This will encapsulate Iraq. We were doing a garbage buyback program. So we would pay the Iraqis to pick up garbage by the truckload, and we would pay them for it. But we had to man these garbage sites. And so we were on a blocking position several kilometers away. Neighbors and his squad were at the garbage point. And a guy popped out of an alleyway, cooked off an RPG round, and popped it right into him. RPG hit him right in the helmet. When we heard the detonation, and we heard them on the radio, we abandoned our blocking position immediately. We called up, that we were abandoning position. We were the fastest. We could get there the quickest, and so we hauled ass, and when we got there, he was alive, but there was nothing else that could be done. He was the first casualty with third Battalion 325 Task Force Falcon. But yeah, I retract my statement. The garbage purchasing program probably is what encapsulates Iraq. Losing kids.
People to pick up garbage in their own country,
and
which they otherwise wouldn't do.
And us dying protecting the garbage.
What would you say to Americans? Because this thank you for your service thing it seems like it has become a bit of a cliche. What would you say? The Vietnam vets, as you indicated, they don't want to hear thank you for your service. They'd rather hear welcome home. What would you rather hear?
Nothing. Leave me alone. And I'll say that I cherished my time in uniform. I'm proud of having worn it. I'm proud to have gone and fought for my country, for what I thought my country was. But again, there's nothing over there worth a single American life. Nothing. I love the Army. I love the airborne. I love the infantry. I got fucking tattoos. I don't have stickers on my car. I very rarely wear anything that denotes being a veteran. I wear a lot of camouflage, but everybody in Texas wears camouflage. But I don't want the thanks, and I don't want the attention.
So you've kind of answered this question without really answering it, but how does the war live with you day to day? There's this book from Vietnam, called The Things They Carried. And in war, the Vietnam vets are carrying all their water and their ammo, all the stuff you carried.
Mm-hmm.
It's 120 degrees in Iraq, So they're carrying the stuff you carry, and then after the war, there's the stuff they continue to carry after the war. So how does the war still live with you?
I dream about it pretty regularly. I have about 3 or 4 recurring dreams. They're not really nightmares, they're just the same theme, you know? I'll always, there's always going to be a part of me still over there. Every time I see a sunset, I think of Iraq. Iraq, one of the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen. I can't go into a church without thinking of Iraq.
Is that
I
because of the mosque connection?
yeah, I I don't. I've gotten a lot better over the course of the last, you know, 15 years since getting out. But I pick where I go and what I do carefully. I don't trust people. I have to see exits. I have to see entrance routes, exit routes. Uh, we used to call them ATIAs, right? Anticipated target engagement areas. Um, Cover, concealment. It's always there. One of the only links that I have with a lot of the guys I serve with is social media. Do I use it too much? Probably. But that's really the only way I've been able to stay connected with some of these guys. I created pages for every company that I served in, and we congregate and check on each other. I do buddy checks on social media at least every Sunday night. Hey, reach out, reach out. The number one thing that I drive home to guys who contact me or talk to me or reach out to me is, and whoever's watching this, there's nothing wrong with you. We're all going through it. Reach out to anyone. Don't suffer in silence. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. As an infantryman, as a grunt, you're told you're tough. You're tough. There's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't hurt. Keep driving, keep going. It's bullshit. And if anybody that watches this, if they went through this shit, if they've got thoughts or they think they're alone, they think they're not. You're not, man. Call somebody, reach out, ping somebody, email somebody, text somebody, DM somebody. But don't give up. You've been through too much shit to give up.